I'd like to invite all of you to join me today on a journey, and our destination is going to be simplicity. I regularly get comments from people that say that I get to the heart of the issue very quickly, or that I'm able to take complex concepts and situations and make them very simple. And when I hear something like that often enough, what it does is it causes me to wonder, how did I get here? Because I can assure you, when I was born and the doctor slapped me on the bottom, I didn't say, I think there might be an equally effective, less aggressive approach to achieving this goal. So if I wasn't born with this capability, how did I develop it? And so as I thought back on it, what I discovered was, in the spirit of our topic today, a very simple solution. It's a two-step process. The first step is trust. And specifically what we need to trust is our ability to deal with any issue, any situation that comes our way. And we all have this capability. And to help you get in tune with that, I'm going to ask you to go through a little exercise with me. And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, because that'll help block out the visual distractions, and it will also help you focus on the question I'm about to ask you. When you have the answer to the question, open your eyes and I'll know where we are in the process, okay? So here's the question. When in your life have you faced a situation in which you had no background, no experience, and you failed to produce a result? When in your life have you faced a situation in which you had no background and no experience, and you failed to produce a result? When you have the answer, open your eyes. Okay, now if you're really honest with yourselves, the answer is never. Now I know some of us are more harsh critics of ourselves than others, but if you really think about it, no matter how dire the situation, you found a way to deal with it. Now, it may not have been pretty, it may not have occurred on the first, second, or maybe even the third iteration, but you got there, right? You did produce a result. So why is this so important that we are aware of this capability and trust it? Because it makes us better listeners. Because typically when we listen with judgment, we listen with anticipation, we listen with presumption. So if somebody says something that seems right or wrong to us, we can't wait to jump in and either agree or refute what we're hearing. We often anticipate what somebody's going to say, and we don't hear them out, and we're making judgments about that as well. And we presume we know the direction they're headed, and we jump in to provide a solution before we hear all the facts. This is our normal listening style. But when we know that we can trust our ability to deal with anything that comes our way, we don't feel those inclinations. Makes us a lot more effective listeners. So if that happens, then what are we listening for? If we're trying to get to simplicity, what are we listening for? And what we're listening for is incongruity. The difference between what people are saying and what they're doing. So if I tell you that I want to lose weight while I'm sitting there with a big juicy burger in one hand and fries in the other, you may want to question my commitment to that goal, right? So we look at the difference between behaviors and what's being said. We look at the differences between conventional wisdom and what we're observing. One of the programs I've done over the years, and I had the good fortune to just do it recently for Medici, was on pricing. And I'm a value pricing, premium price strategy guy. And the conventional wisdom is that the economy and what your competitors are doing really matter. And in the program, I'm able to demonstrate that really neither is true. So challenging the conventional wisdom, looking at the group think that we all run into from time to time and taking a contrarian attitude, because when there's group euphoria, people are are not looking at the downside. They're not looking at the potential risks or challenges that they're facing. If they're despondent, then they need somebody to help them set aside that disappointment and begin to move forward with vision again. So these are the kinds of things that help us simplify the process and either get to the heart of the issue a lot more quickly or simplify what's seemingly a complex situation. Questions on that? Okay, I'm going to take you through an exercise now because I think it's important for you to gain some experience. You gain some with the fact that you examined your ability to deal with any situation that comes your way. Now I'm going to share with you something that actually happened. I was in the audience of a program and the CEO was talking about his company and the explosive growth that he had seen in the revenues and profits of his company. And when we saw that, when I heard that, somebody in the audience asked the CEO, well, now what are your revenue goals? Now that you've had this explosive growth, what are your revenue goals? And his response was, I'm not a numbers guy. That's not what I do. That's not where I focus my attention. My attention is being focused on improving our culture because I know if I improve the culture, then the numbers will be there. Then he got another question about whether or not he was using a dashboard or what metrics he was using to help manage his company. And once again, he responded that other people do that because that's not his forte. All right? So this is the situation. So here are the questions. I'm going to give you one question at a time, and we're going to have 60 seconds for the first question. You can work individually, you can work with people at your table, whichever you prefer. But here's the first question. You have 60 seconds to consider it. What incongruity exists in this exchange between the speaker and the audience? Okay? Your time starts now. Okay, thank you. Let's come together again. Okay, what I'd like to have you do now is share with us what you came up with at your table. So, Amber, if you will. This table?
So everyone, we decided that it has to be a combination of looking at leading or lagging indicators, something that's financial, as well as the same time you're looking at culture. So he's got to be able to present both sides.
Both sides.
So it's not just numbers and it's not just culture, but a CEO being attentive to certain things that tell him or her how they're doing.
Okay. Yeah. Other thoughts?
This isn't really an indicator that he's a strong leader or on top of his business and probably isn't going to be successful as a result of it. He doesn't have a well-rounded picture of what's going on in his company.
Okay, so there are pieces of the puzzle missing.
Yes.
Okay, good. Who else had? Lori?
So a couple of the things that came up with when we were discussing it was one, he immediately stated that the culture was the driving factor in the growth, but yet he doesn't have metrics that he stays on top of. So he's kind of making a statement without actually having any support for it. So the two have to go together. So he's saying one thing but has no idea if it's truly related. And then secondly, we were discussing the fact that he's not a numbers guy and he has other people to monitor. So really, in our eyes, he's not really developing a good culture because he's coming up with the "it's not my job" scenario, and probably not the best way to start developing a culture.
Okay, very good. So, any others? So basically, we're hearing a very similar kind of message here, and that is the dichotomy between the audience and the speaker was that the speaker is focused on culture and the audience was focused on metrics, right? So we've got this disconnect here, which is why you actually could feel the tension growing in that program because of that difference, that incongruity, okay? So that brings us to the second question, and you'll have 2 minutes for this. The second question is, how can you resolve this incongruity very simply. Okay? Time starts now. Okay, if we can come back together again, please. Thank you. Thank you for coming back so quickly. All right. Who would like to start? Where did you come? Les?
Well, first of all, we think that the guy ought to get a different job. Perhaps work in HR, because I don't know a CEO anywhere who doesn't know what the revenue goals are.
Yeah.
So the first thing we got to do is kind of going back to the point that Mary was making. Let's make sure that the guy understands what those things are, that he understands what some of the key indicators are that are leading to those goals, and be able to communicate about that.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else? Mary?
We thought that just in that moment, he might be able to bring up the CFO and say, let's bring Lori up and let her talk to those numbers and kind of spread the credit around that this has been accomplished by the entire team, as opposed to just being, if he doesn't know the numbers, maybe he shouldn't say he doesn't know the numbers in front of a company that's going to be a little concerned about that, but bring up the CFO who would.
Okay. Bob?
I guess the one thing is if your profits are up and your revenue is up, then you have to recognize the people that made that happen. And he's not a team player, because I think you really need to say, well, our sales team did a fantastic job there, but you need to share it with your team.
Okay. Anyone else?
It strikes me that we discussed that if his company was going in the wrong direction, or maybe sales were going down, it would be the same. He would have the same objective to really know what the trajectory is in his business, whether it's succeeding and revenue is growing or whether it's declining. Having an awareness of that and knowing who's in charge of enacting change. And a leader, of course, enacts change. And if he's not aware of the numbers, whether it's up or down, or he doesn't have clear goals, then he's obviously setting a very wrong example for the rest of his leadership team. So.
Okay, great. Well, we're running out of time here. Actually, the conclusion that I came up with was what Mary espoused with the first question, is that the dichotomy, the incongruity here is between a goal orientation and cultural orientation. And in reality, as Mary said, we need both. If you don't have a culture, it doesn't matter what metrics you set, you're probably not going to get there. And if you aren't measuring things, then you'll never know whether or not what you're doing culturally is really working and going to make a difference. So this is the way that we can make that connection. We can see what the source of the problem is, and we can then offer advice to them is, look, you need to find a better way to marry the two, and every company needs to be able to do that. That's what I'm talking about simplifying things. And with that, do we have time for questions, or are we out of time? We have 5 minutes for questions. So anybody have any questions? Well, great. If you have interest in more information like this, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand, Mary.
I was kind of a late hand raiser. I actually don't have a question, but I think I misunderstood the second question.
Okay.
Because what I was thinking was that he's standing up in front of all these people who are freaking out because he doesn't know the numbers and they're, what? And so my answer was, bring the CFO up if you don't know it. So I see what you're saying there, but I don't know if anybody else misinterpreted the question like I did. It's like, you're in the middle of a problem right now. How do you resolve it? Because they're in the middle of a meeting. So
Because he was continuously losing credibility with his audience. And because he wasn't focused on the metric side, and they were. So there was a big difference there. Now, the people in the audience who were culturally oriented were probably buying into his message very readily and kind of wondering why he was being challenged so heavily on the metric side of things. So, but it existed, I'm sure, in the audience as well, as within the audience as between the audience and the speaker in this
And I
situation.
see the importance of fixing it overall in that changing the thinking that got him there in the first place.
Right.
I just think it's really important in any kind of situation that we're in is we can't just operate out of our own styles. And so when we're presenting a message to anyone or we're sharing knowledge, is how is all of our audiences going to receive it? Because they hear it through their style, their perspectives, their lens. And so what's the balance here? So there's a balance. Nothing is mutually exclusive. So it's not culture, it's not just numbers, is what do people that are hearing me need to hear? And how do I need to deliver that message?
That's another great way to phrase it because his lens was culture. The people in the audience asking the questions, theirs was a metric, a goal orientation. So the question when you have incongruity like that is how do we blend the two? It's not either or. How do we convert that or that naturally exists there to an and? Do we have this? Can we have the metrics and the culture? That's the key to it. Yes, Bill.
Dale, I see this in you every day we work together. I mean, this behavior that you showed here today. I mean, you actually do keep everything congruent. How did you get there? How did you arrive there? Because I know it's a real strength of yours, but can you help us figure out how to get there?
Well, it's this two-step process, and I can't say that I did it consciously. I'm an experimenter, okay? So I try a lot of different things. Some work, some don't, but I'm constantly learning from those experiences. And as a result of what I learn, the things that work, I keep doing. The things that don't, I stop doing. And over time, it evolves. So I didn't start out with that capability of being able to simplify things or to get to the core of the issue very quickly. But somewhere along the line, I picked up on the fact that when I'm seeing one thing and hearing another, that it's not going to work and I have to find a way to blend the two. And it wasn't until, as I said, that I started getting these comments on a regular basis from people that I began to explore how did I get there? And this two-step process where you're trusting, number one, your ability to deal with any situation that comes your way. And as a result of that awareness and that confidence, allowing other people to talk and not, becoming a better listener as a result. And then focusing that listening attention on the incongruities that you're hearing or seeing. Because it's in that incongruity, in seeing those two different perspectives, that you're going to be able to blend them, create that and perspective that's going to solve or resolve both issues. Make sense? Yeah. Question on that?
Thank you.
Well, if you'd like more information on awareness issues, how to become more aware of our capabilities, our strengths, and how to improve upon them, I've written this series of books I call the Awareness Trilogy. And it looks like I got trilogy in there twice. So it must be really important that it's a trilogy. And I am taking these messages to kids now on the website that I'm doing that on, and I write a blog that it's actually both for parents and the kids, and it's called teachingconfidence.com. So if you have an interest, please check it out. If you like the blog post, you want to sign up for them, I'll send them to you on a regular basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.